Did you know that trade between Africa and the Caribbean has surged by over 40% in the last decade? From cocoa to fashion, from rum to renewable energy, these regions are quietly building bridges across the Atlantic. But what does this mean for their future? And ours? Welcome to Africa's Lost Heritage, where we uncover hidden stories that connect our past to our future. Today, we explore a powerful and growing alliance, the trade relationship between Africa and the Caribbean. For centuries, these two regions were bound by tragedy through slavery, colonization, and exploitation. But today, a new chapter is unfolding. Trade is no longer just about raw materials. It's about cultural exchange, innovation, and reclaiming agency on the global stage. In this documentary, we'll uncover how this trade boom is reshaping lives, fueling economies, and reviving old connections across the Atlantic. Historically, trade between Africa and the Caribbean was defined by colonial powers. Goods moved across the Atlantic not for African or Caribbean benefit, but to enrich Europe. Sugar, coffee, cocoa, and enslaved labor became the currency of empire. Yet Africa was no stranger to trade. Powerful kingdoms, Ghana, Mali, Songhai, maintained complex networks stretching across the Sahara and into coastal ports, long before European intervention. Their merchants dealt in gold, salt, textiles, and other commodities, establishing patterns that still echo today. Over the past 20 years, leaders from Africa and the Caribbean have sought to rebuild direct trade ties, cutting out middlemen and forging partnerships rooted in mutual respect. This transformation reflects more than economics. It is symbolic healing of the scars left by the Middle Passage, turning exploitation into collaboration. 1. Agriculture, the backbone of trade. Agriculture is central to Africa-Caribbean trade today. Ghanaian cocoa now flows directly to Caribbean chocolate industries. Small cooperatives in Accra and Kumasi work with chocolatiers in Jamaica and Barbados to create premium bean-to-bar chocolate, marketed as both delicious and culturally meaningful. Farmers report that direct trade has improved incomes dramatically. Kwame Mensah, a cocoa farmer in Ghana, explains, "For the first time, we're talking directly to buyers who appreciate the quality of our beans, and we see our heritage reflected in the chocolate itself." Meanwhile, Caribbean rum and spices, rum from Barbados, nutmeg from Grenada, allspice from Jamaica, are being shipped to African markets for the first time in modern history. Small distributors in Lagos and Nairobi are experimenting with Caribbean-inspired beverages and spice blends, bringing flavors from across the Atlantic into local cuisine. Agro-processing initiatives also thrive. Cassava flour from Nigeria, tropical fruits from Ghana, and Caribbean-grown sugar are now being used in value-added products rather than exported raw. This marks a shift from extractive trade to mutually beneficial collaboration, where producers retain control over both product and profit. Rum from Barbados, nutmeg from Grenada, allspice from Jamaica are being shipped to African markets for the first time in modern history. Small distributors in Lagos and Nairobi are experimenting with Caribbean-inspired beverages and spice blends, bringing flavors from across the Atlantic into local cuisine. Agricultural innovation is also emerging in agro-processing. Cassava flour from Nigeria, tropical fruits from Ghana, and Caribbean-grown sugar are now being used in value-added products rather than exported as raw commodities. This represents a shift from extractive trade to mutually beneficial collaboration, where producers retain control over both product and profit. The trade of textiles and fashion is not just about commerce, it is about storytelling and identity. African prints, vibrant kente, Ankara, and Adire are merging with Caribbean styles in clothing lines, home decor, and accessories. Fashion festivals in Kingston and Accra now showcase cross-continental collaborations, with designers from both regions working together to create collections that celebrate shared history. Consider the story of Aisha Thompson, a Jamaican fashion designer who partners with weavers in Accra. Their collaborative line, Atlantic Threads, sells out within weeks, combining traditional African patterns with Caribbean cuts and colors. Aisha reflects, "This is more than fashion. It's a way to honor our ancestors and show the world that our cultures are alive and evolving together." Beyond high fashion, local markets are thriving with hybrid products.
handbags with African prints and Caribbean beadwork, clothing brands that incorporate Caribbean symbols and African motifs, and even festival costumes that tell stories of resistance and resilience. This industry not only fuels economic growth, but strengthens cultural identity and pride. 3. Energy and technology, building sustainable futures. African nations rich in solar and wind technology are partnering with Caribbean islands to reduce reliance on imported fuel. Kenyan startups export solar-powered irrigation systems to Caribbean farmers. Nigerian tech companies provide fintech solutions for cross-Atlantic transactions. These initiatives represent more than economics. They are knowledge transfer and sustainable collaboration, creating a blueprint for development in the global South. Trade is no longer just about food or fashion. African nations rich in solar and wind technology are now partnering with Caribbean islands looking to reduce their dependence on imported fuel. Projects in countries like Dominica, Barbados, and St. Lucia are deploying African-designed solar panels and microgrids, creating jobs, lowering energy costs, and reducing carbon footprints. Kenyan startups, for instance, are exporting small-scale solar-powered irrigation systems to Caribbean farmers, allowing them to cultivate crops more efficiently while relying less on fossil fuels. Nigerian tech companies are also exporting fintech solutions that help small Caribbean businesses handle international payments, manage inventory, and track shipments. These initiatives are more than economic, they are revolutionary. They represent a transfer of knowledge, innovation, and sustainable practices, creating a blueprint for collaboration in the global South. 4. Personal stories, the human face of trade. Trade is about people. Emmanuel in Accra handcrafts kente scarves sold in Caribbean boutiques, while Marcia in Grenada exports spices to Ghanaian restaurants. Young developers in Lagos have created platforms connecting African suppliers with Caribbean importers, streamlining trade and ensuring fair compensation for all involved. These stories show that African-Caribbean trade transforms lives, not just economies. Africa: Ghana, cocoa, textiles, and tech. Nigeria: fintech, agriculture, and energy solutions. Kenya: renewables, tech, and education tools. The Caribbean: Jamaica: chocolate, fashion, cultural exports. Barbados: rum, tourism-linked trade, and renewables pilots. Trinidad and Tobago: oil-adjacent industries, agri-processing, and tech. By mapping these connections, we see a network of mutually reinforcing trade flows, showing how historical ties are being reshaped into future prosperity. Trade is not just numbers on a spreadsheet. It is about the people driving these exchanges. Take Emmanuel, a young entrepreneur in Accra who handcrafts kente scarves. He says, "I feel like I'm not just selling a product, I'm sharing my culture and telling a story that was nearly lost." Or consider Marcia, an organic spice farmer in Grenada. Through networks connecting Caribbean producers with African buyers, her allspice and nutmeg are now featured in Ghanaian restaurants and specialty stores. Marcia says, "It's incredible to see my spices traveling back across the Atlantic to lands that share a history with my people." Even young tech entrepreneurs are getting involved. In Lagos, a team of developers has created a platform connecting Caribbean importers with African suppliers. Their goal is to streamline trade, reduce costs, and ensure fair compensation for all involved. These stories illustrate that African-Caribbean trade is transforming lives, not just economies. 5. Key countries leading the charge. Certain countries are becoming hubs for this new trade. On the African side, Ghana: cocoa, textiles, and technology. Nigeria: fintech, agriculture, and energy solutions. Kenya: renewable energy, tech, and education tools. The Caribbean: Jamaica: chocolate, fashion, cultural exports. Barbados: rum, tourism-linked trade, and renewables pilots. Trinidad and Tobago: oil-adjacent industries, agri-processing, and tech. By mapping these connections, we see a network of mutually reinforcing trade flows, showing how historical ties are being reshaped into future prosperity. 6. Cultural exchange, beyond goods. Music, culinary traditions, festivals, and literature now travel alongside goods. Reggae festivals in Accra feature Caribbean and African artists. Caribbean food festivals highlight African-grown ingredients. Trade is not just economic, it is cultural revival, celebrating shared heritage and fostering understanding. This new trade alliance is not without challenges. limited shipping routes force many goods to route through Europe or North America, increasing costs and delays. Customs regulations, tariffs, and differing standards frustrate traders. Political and economic challenges loom large. Debt burdens, global competition, and dependency on larger economies. Yet despite obstacles, determination remains unshaken. Traders, governments, and diaspora networks continue building solutions. Efforts to overcome these challenges are underway. The African-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum promotes smoother trade routes, reduced tariffs, and direct shipping. Diaspora communities act as bridges, connecting African producers with Caribbean buyers. Festivals and trade expos now serve as networking hubs for young entrepreneurs. Success stories abound: Barbados rum reaching Ghanaian markets, African solar panels powering Caribbean homes, and technology platforms connecting small businesses across continents. These collaborations are not only economic, they are acts of historical restoration, rebuilding trust and opportunity. African-Caribbean trade is more than exports and imports. It is rewriting history. From exploitation to empowerment, these regions are proving that unity across the Atlantic is possible and powerful. The future of African-Caribbean trade is one of opportunity, resilience, and cultural pride. In that future lies a profound truth. We are not just trading goods, we are trading hope. If this story moved you, explore more about African-Caribbean trade, its potential, and its history. Share your thoughts. What industries should be prioritized? And don't forget to check out our other documentaries here on Africa's lost heritage. Together, let's uncover the past, empower the present, and shape the future. If this story moved you, explore more about African-Caribbean trade, its potential, and its history. Share your thoughts. Finally, trade is also about ideas, art, and culture. Music, culinary traditions, festivals, and literature are all traveling alongside goods. Cultural festivals in both regions now feature joint exhibitions, concerts, and workshops, giving young people the chance to see how African and Caribbean creativity influence each other. For instance, a reggae festival in Accra showcases Caribbean artists alongside Ghanaian musicians, while Caribbean food festivals now feature dishes prepared with African-grown ingredients. These exchanges strengthen identity, foster mutual understanding, and cement trade as a vehicle for cultural renaissance.